from one Bama alum to another, the struggles of Justin Thomas. I mean, it's been remarkable. A different tale for him. Missing the cut at the 3M Open. He's missed 5 cuts in his last 7 starts. In the field at the Wyndham Championship, but in jeopardy, Eamon, of missing the FedEx Cup playoffs. We're looking at these, I guess, lowlights, as it were. It was a double bogey on the par 5 18th. Now this is his shot at the par 3 4th. And again, finding the agua here.
Yeah, he did birdie 4 of his next 5 holes after that, but he did miss the cut by 2 strokes. It was a tough cut last week at 3M, but still. And here are his last 10 starts, and not really much comfort there. He did finish tied 9th at the Travelers Championship, but you see a slew of missed cuts and a lot of high finishes, particularly in the major championships.
Absolutely not accustomed to being where he is at this point in the season. 79th. The FedEx Cup standings. We take a look at the all-important bubble. 70, Austin Eckroat, the bubble boy, trying to make it into the FedEx Cup playoffs. So JT has a lot going on, trying to make it into the playoffs, trying to get the attention of the U.S. Ryder Cup captain in Zach Johnson.
You make the Ryder Cup team if you haven't made the playoffs? Are they connected?
I think they might be. And listen, JT is a big boy, and he has big-time goals, often shares those goals with the media kind of toward the end of the season. In fact, often will share the cell phone screenshot at Eastlake, coincidentally. I just think it's going to be tough for him when you look at where he sits, currently 14th in the U.S. Ryder Cup standings. What does he have to do this week at the Wyndham, considering the players he has to, perhaps leap over, for example? I mean, you know that Max Homa has already won twice this season. He's 7th in the world as well as 7th in the standings. Cameron Young, T6 of the Deer, T8 at the Open. 9th on the list is Jordan Spieth. 10 is Keegan Bradley. 11, Colin Morikawa, who had the clinching point at Whistling Straits. 12th is Ricky Fowler, who won the Rocket Mortgage. Sam Burns is 13th. He won the match play. Talk about, match play bona fides, and was also on the 2022 President's Cup. So there's just not a lot of wiggle room for JT. We know the resume is strong. Pairs like a nice Merlot and steak with Jordan Spieth during all of these incredible, Ryder Cup and President's Cup moments. But the form isn't there right now. And I guess the question boils down to, is it form or is it history for Justin Thomas?
I would argue it's neither when it comes to the Ryder Cup. Yes, the form isn't there. If we're going to go by form, there's not only 12 players playing better than Justin Thomas right now. There's dozens of guys playing better. But it's not form. It's heart and soul. And if you can find me 12 guys who bring more of that to a Ryder Cup team than Justin Thomas, then Europe should just run up the white flag right now. But there aren't 12 guys who bring more of that to a Ryder Cup.
You got to make putts in the Ryder Cup, too. You got to have heart and soul, but you got to make putts.
Form and match play is very different to form in stroke play events. And just the elixir effect of being in a team environment, of feeling that you're carrying your buddies with you. We've seen what that has done to JT in the past. We saw it even on the European side with Shane Lowry at the last Ryder Cup. He's kind of the heart and soul, losing effort, but he was very much the heart and soul of that team. And I think that's what you're going to see with JT. I think it's a huge assumption that Zach Johnson's not going to pick him. I would be shocked if Justin Thomas is not on the flame.
I don't think heart and soul is an issue. I think heart and soul was an issue, maybe Ryder Cup task force. I think the eyes of the American player are wide open at this point, and they are tired of being whipping boys for Europe, especially overseas. And yes, Justin Thomas would bring a wealth of experience, but how many times have American golf fans stood and watched Colin Montgomery on the 18th green somewhere in Europe, most likely, making a putt on the 17th or 18th green and knocking out an American stud? We've seen it for time immemorial. And I think that at this point, you want to make sure that you've got, yes, heart and soul, but also the form to get the job done when you haven't won on the road since 1993.
No, and I think a lot of it might depend also in terms of the setup of the Marco Simone golf course in Italy. And that matters. I mean, if you go back to 2018, Le Golf National in Paris, and the captain's picks, there weren't 6 of them back then for Jim Furyk, but they came under scrutiny. And Jim burned a pick on Phil Mickelson, who literally could not have hit French territory if he teed off from the top of the Eiffel Tower. That's how bad he was that week. And it showed up, and it cost a Ryder Cup. I mean, it was pointless picking Phil that week. I don't think the same argument can be made of JT here. Yeah, the form isn't there. He's 159th in putting, the worst he's ever been.
That's what I'm saying.
The slightly worrying thing is that it's starting to bleed into some of the rest of his game. He's 63rd off the tee versus 16th last year. He's 42nd in putting, or in strokes gained approach, versus 8th last year. So there are issues there, but I still think that in terms of that team environment and in alternate shot, might be a bit of an issue if he's wayward. But if you're talking best ball, and he still brings that fire in singles, and you cannot teach somebody the fire. There are a lot of flatline guys who are in the lineup for this Ryder Cup. He ain't one of them.
It'll be fascinating to see what Captain Zach Johnson ultimately does